Is Trump 2.0 already here for US immigration? That is what we're talking about on today's Live at Lunch. My name is Emily Sumner with Sumner Immigration Law, and I'm glad that you've joined us, whether you're joining us on the live stream or whether you're catching the replay. So I put a post up on my LinkedIn page the other day about how we are already seeing some significant changes, at least from USCIS, since the election, since just in the past several weeks. So I think that there are already changes being made, and I've heard that from other immigration attorneys as well. So I wanted to just chat about that for a minute, about what we've already seen and what we can expect more or less as we move into January. The things that we have seen so far. Number one, yesterday, USCIS sent an email saying that medical exams are now required to be filed with the green card applications. So in this case, this only applies to cases that are being filed within the United States. So if you're submitting an I-485 application, as of yesterday, the medical exam has to be submitted with that, or else they will reject the packet. USCIS says that that is because there were a large number of requests for evidence being issued, and that's the reason that they gave. It is what it is. My sense is, yes, it could be for streamlining purposes, but this is a significant change that it's been in place for years and years. The policy for years has been that you can submit the medical exam either at the time of filing or after. We typically would ask the clients wait for the request for evidence just so that we make sure that the medical exam is properly matched up with the file with USCIS, but it's been that way for years. And it has given a level of flexibility to applicants in that they don't have to have that particular element completed. There are lots of other pieces, of course, that we have to have completed before we file the green card application, but there was some flexibility and that they didn't have to have that particular piece done before we file. So, it is what it is. We don't have any control over it, of course, but as of yesterday, we have to include that filing or include the medical exam, the completed medical exam with the I-485 filings. As I mentioned, that does not apply to, there's a completely different process if you're applying for a green card from outside of the United States. If you're applying for an immigrant visa, at a US consulate overseas, there's a completely different process to get the medical exam, and it does not apply to that particular type of case. So USCIS has said it is now a requirement that it be filed concurrently with the green card application, and your case will be sent back. It will be rejected, not denied. Denied is when they actually take the money, the filing fees, and then issue a denial. Anyway, the case will be sent back. It'll be rejected if you file without the medical exam. So like I said, it is what it is. We're dealing with it. We've advised clients. We're coming up with a plan to deal with this. The really frustrating part, I think, for us as immigration law professionals and for clients and other applicants is that there was no advance warning about this. It literally, there's no grace period. There was not even like a week's warning. So if you by chance, I don't think we have clients in this situation, but if you by chance had submitted the I-485 and it was in transit to USCIS, and then this announcement was made, it'll get kicked back. There's no grace period. So that's kind of typical. I think that's very classic. It's something that we're going to see a lot in the coming administration. So that's not to say that, things are going to be absolutely terrible and things are going to be impossible. Not at all. But they are going to be more difficult. And as I've said in previous videos, there are going to be some changes that will be regulatory changes to the regulation. There are going to be some changes that are policy changes like this one. So this was a policy change where USCIS sent out this email. They didn't have to change the regulations. They can just, for this type of thing, they can just say, hey, here's our new policy. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming out, these changes in policy that aren't the end of the world. It's not the end of the world to have to send the medical exam with the green card application. It's, like I said, it takes away some flexibility, but it's not the end of the world. It's the fact that there was no advance warning that was frustrating. But again, it is what it is. We're regrouping. We're coming up with a plan for our clients. But I think that we can see a lot more of that going forward. Other things that we have seen so far is an uptick in requests for evidence, especially for H-1Bs. We've seen a lot more specialty, not a lot more, but we've seen specialty occupation requests for evidence. that we haven't seen in years, like since before the previous, or since the previous Trump administration. Every now, like I can count on one hand, I think, the number of requests for evidence regarding specialty occupation that we've gotten for the past several years. And we're preparing the cases the exact same way, all the same documentation and information, but just the standard is changing, is shifting a bit. And that's the kind of thing that I've talked about in previous videos, that they're not sending a memo out. They're not sending an email out saying, hey, now we're going to be stricter. We're going to have higher standards. We're going to have different standards. They're not sending that out. The way that we know about this type of thing is just from experience, from experiencing it, from filing cases and talking to other immigration lawyers. So I think we'll see more of that. Again, not the end of the world. We can respond to the requests for evidence. Knock on wood, they'll be approved. It's a pain and it's more expensive, but it's not the end of the road. We've also seen a notice of intent to deny on an H for alleged inconsistencies between different filings. It's not. The information is not inconsistent, but they are looking at that more closely. And then we have a request for evidence on a different type of filing, an I-140 filing, asking for some documentation that we previously sent in. Honestly, that's not unusual, unfortunately, for USCIS to ask for information that we already sent. And things happen. The people at USCIS, I tell clients all the time, the USCIS officers and the people in the mailroom, they are people too. They, things happen, things get dropped and then they're not sure how to match it up. It happens. It's annoying for sure. So I'm not necessarily sure that that's related to any major shift in policy, but my point is, I think we'll see a lot more of this type of request for evidence, just this shift in standards and changes, that kind of thing that we haven't seen previously, or at least since the past Trump administration. But like I said, it is not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that we can't file immigration cases. It does not mean everybody who wasn't born in the United States is getting deported immediately. None of that is true. We just have to take things, as I told my team the other day, we have to take things one case at a time, one step at a time, and just work the problem. As my friend and neighbor says, just work the problem. She's a nurse. Work the problem as things come up. So we are here to support you with that if you need help with immigration cases, family-based or employment-based. Going into January, I have 2 previous videos on this, one on employment-based, one on family-based, on what we can potentially expect. The truth is nobody knows, right? Nobody knows. Politicians all the time, regardless of who it is, they make promises. They make campaign promises saying, I'm going to do X, Y, Z when I'm in office. And then sometimes they're able to do that. Sometimes they don't do that, either because they're not able to. Politically, we have a system of checks and balances, or because because they just don't. They have different priorities once they're in office from what they say they're going to do when they're on the campaign trail. So I'm not saying, oh, don't be worried, everything is totally fine, everything's going to be, just as it was before. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not invalidating anybody's apprehension or fears or worries at all. But we do have to take things step by step. So we don't know exactly what to anticipate, because we don't know exactly what the administration's priorities are going to be. But we do have a sense of that. Like I said, in the previous videos, I mentioned some things that happened previously. One of the very first things that Trump did when he was in office in 2017 was to implement what was called the Muslim travel ban. So implementing specific bans that is possible under the law, as the way that the law is written right now. And there were ways to overcome that, to get around that, but there were waivers for that. So again, not the end of the road, but definitely making things harder. So I think we'll see that. I think that we will see definitely an uptick in requests for evidence. As I've mentioned before, I think we will see regulatory changes, or at least proposed regulatory changes. I think we'll see a lot of litigation around proposed changes as well. So people, including lawyers, pushing back on some of these changes that just aren't reasonable in the minds of many. So anyway, that's kind of a shorter live at lunch for today, but that's kind of what we can anticipate going forward. My big takeaway right now, or my big point right now for today, is that we are already seeing these changes. So not to instill fear or anxiety in anybody anymore than is already there, but I really encourage you, if you have something immigration-wise that you need to file, talk to your immigration lawyer. This is not legal advice, but I really would consider getting it in sooner rather than later to potentially, hopefully, avoid some of these changes that we know are coming inevitably that will make the process longer, harder, more expensive. So go ahead and get those done, and you'll just feel good knowing that you've taken a really solid step, gotten something big checked off your list before the end of the year. That's always a good feeling. So I hope that you have found this information helpful. If you have, please share this video with a friend or a colleague and make sure that you subscribe to our channel. Otherwise, I hope you'll tune in next week for our live at lunch at 12 noon on Tuesday. Until next time, I'm Emily Sumner with Sumner Immigration, helping clients around the United States and around the world with employment-based and family-based immigration matters. If you have a question, feel free to put those in the comments. I'll check them as I can. I can't give legal advice on this type of platform, but you're welcome to set up a consultation with us, which you can do on our website, which is sumnerimmigration.com, or by calling us or sending an email to info@sumnerimmigration.com. Until next time.